All right, it looks like we got the last couple of you guys trickling in, and welcome out to today's presentation. I'm really excited to talk to you guys. My name is Tanner Guzzi, and today we are talking about the 6 steps to a perfect image. Now, I'm sure that some of you probably have some hesitation even about the value of a presentation like this. Why does style even matter? Why should I care about how I look? And trust me, we're going to hit on all of those points as we go through this. And just to give you a heads up, this is a little bit different than maybe some webinars or some other presentations you've been on before. I don't like a lot of fluff. There's not a lot of storytelling. I'm not going to be doing like giveaways or dance-offs or anything else like that. I basically just want to get to the meat of what we're talking about so I can help you start improving your life by improving the way that you dress, because it's going to change not only the way that you see yourself, but also the way that other people see you. And as you can improve both of those components of your life, then your life in general will start to get better. And that's something that is applicable to every man, whether you feel like you are already at the top of your game and you just want to eke out even a little bit more out of this great life that you have, or you feel like you've got a lot of progress that can be made. We all want to be a little bit better. We all want to do a little bit more, and improving your appearance is one of the ways that can help facilitate that. So before we dive in, let me just talk to you about whether or not this is actually for you. And so let's talk about who this is for. Now, this is for you if you are successful, if you feel like you have been able to set and accomplish a lot of goals in your life, but if the people who maybe saw you on the street, potential clients, potential investors, maybe potential dates, if they wouldn't ever actually be able to see your success just by looking at you, if they're writing you off as someone who's average or less than successful just because of the way you look and the way that you're presenting yourself. Maybe you are needing a fresh start after some sort of big event in your life, whether that's graduating from college and you're moving on to this major point in your career. Maybe you just got a really big promotion. Maybe you've left your company that you've been with for a long time and you've started your own business. Maybe you've recently been divorced and you're trying to get back into the dating pool. A lot of men, as we find ourselves in new predicaments, a lot of times find this as a really good opportunity to reinvent ourselves, and changing the way that you look can be a good way to help out with that process. Maybe you're still single and you're wanting to find the right partner. Maybe you don't know the best way to be able to present yourself when you're out there in the dating pool, and you want to be able to attract the right kind of person. And in order to do that, you may be actively repelling people just because of the way that you're dressing and the way that you look like you take care of yourself or you pay attention to detail. Maybe you are one of those guys who is average and you are sick of feeling that way. If you feel that way, one of the best things you can do, one of the quickest returns on investment that you can get, and one of the things that will immediately trigger other self-improvement in your life, is by improving the way that you dress. And lastly, if you're just someone who is into self-improvement, you're someone who likes to focus on getting in better shape, building your business, building your relationships and your network, you see yourself as a brand, or even if you don't necessarily see yourself as a brand, you were just interested in making your life as good as it possibly can be, at some point, you are going to recognize that the way you dress yourself is consistent with that self-improvement, and the better you dress, then the more you can improve yourself. And so if any of this sounds like you, then this is for you, and I'm excited to talk to you about this and show you just how easy it is to actually dress in a way that is congruent with who you are and consistent with your aspirations and who you want to become. So let me ask you this. What would your life look like if every day you could feel, look, and act like it was the best day of your life? Now, I'm sure that if you think about at some point in your life, whether it's going to prom in high school or the day that you got married or just something, you can think back to at one point in your life where you walked out of the room, your bedroom, maybe it was a dressing room, maybe it was somewhere else, and you knew that you looked like $1,000,000. I want you to take a couple of seconds and think about that. What were you wearing? What was the event? What was the environment? Why were you dressed the way that you were? And most importantly, how did feeling like you were on top of the world and you looked like $1,000,000 actually improve that experience that you were about to participate in? Did it make it better? Did it make it more memorable? Did it make it more enjoyable? Did it make you more confident and competent? The odds are probably yes, absolutely, right? I mean, most of us know what it's like to feel like we're on top of our game, and we know what it's like, even if it's just once or twice in our lives, to feel like our style is completely dialed and on point, and how good that can feel. Now, what would your life be like if every day you could feel like that. Every day you could walk out ready to face the world knowing that you looked and felt as dialed in as you possibly could be. Now add to that, what would it be if you could do that without having to spend a ton of time or energy actually getting ready in the morning? You don't have to rival the women in your life who spend 2 or 3 hours doing their hair or doing their makeup. If you could just go through a good, simple routine every morning and know that whatever it is that you put on, you're going to look killer in it, and it's going to facilitate your ability to do bigger and more important things in your life. What if you could do that without having to worry about the latest trends, without having to worry or wonder if what you're wearing is what's being talked about on GQ or in Esquire or any of these other magazines, or if it's outdated or too trendy or too faddish, if you just knew that what you had on was dialed. And most importantly, if you could do that without questioning whether or not it was actually consistent with who you are. Because I'm sure that you've been here before too, where you've tried on an outfit or you've tried to adopt a style and you felt like a fake or a fraud as you were wearing it. Maybe you felt like a poser, maybe you felt like it just wasn't you, and it didn't matter if everybody said that that was the way that you were supposed to be dressing. You felt like a phony while you were wearing that. What would your life be like if you could do all of these things and have that be for you every single day? Now, not only what would that do for you personally and just on your own kind of self-perception level, but what would that do for your career? How would that help you, whether you run your own business and you work face-to-face with clients, and how would that help with your perception of them? Or maybe you're working your way up the ladder. How would that help with your perception of both your underlings and the people who employ you? What would that do for your ability to feel like you are on your game every single day? You can focus, you can double down. You don't have to worry about the distractions of feeling sloppy or slovenly. You can just get in and focus on the work. What would it do for your relationships? Not only romantic relationships, but what would it do for the relationships that you have with your friends or your employees or your employer or your kids or your parents or your neighbors or the other important people in your life? How much more respect would you feel like you were able to command from these important people if you looked like a man who deserved respect as opposed to one who was just average, or even worse, someone who didn't look like he cared about having anybody's respect? And ultimately, what would it do for your perception of yourself? If you could see every time you looked in the mirror, every time you walked by a car and caught your reflection in its windows, if you could see a man who looked like he was in the business of shaping the world in his image, a man who paid attention to detail, a man who took charge and who acted for his own well-being and the well-being of others rather than just being acted upon by the rest of the world, what would that do for your own image? I imagine that that would be life-changing for you. I know that because that is life-changing for me. I have been through this transformation myself, and I can tell you that just these simple changes of improving the way that you look can fundamentally shift the way that you view yourself and the way that other people perceive you, and it can improve your life in so many different ways. So in the next hour, I'm going to give you that information. I'm going to show you how that transformation is possible for you. Not only that, I'm going to show you how to get all of those benefits plus more and do it with minimal effort without having to spend a ton of time or a ton of money or a ton of effort in general worrying about what you're putting on your body every single day. Whether that's negative effort or positive effort, you don't have to worry about it because you're getting more bang for your buck without having to put in a ton of energy. And in this next hour, I'm going to show you how to create a system that will work for you in 20 days or 20 years. It doesn't matter. But basically every day, starting from now, you will be able to get dressed and feel like $1,000,000 regardless of what else is going on in the world around you. This is something that is not just applicable today. I am not in the next hour going to show you the 5 shoes that you need to own this summer or the 1 tie knot that you need to tie. I'm not interested in teaching you that, and I know that you're not interested in learning that. I'm going to give you my system that ensures that you will always be well dressed and well presented regardless of what else is going on in the rest of the world. In the next hour, I'm going to show you how to leverage your appearance so that it leads to bigger and better things in your life. Because whether we like it or not, people judge us by the way that we look. And people who look good are given the benefit of the doubt more, they're paid more, they're treated more favorably, and overall, they get more out of life than those who don't. Now, you may not be able to do anything about the genetics you were born with. You may not be able to do anything about the proportions between your nose and your ears or these other things, but you can absolutely leverage your appearance to lead to more advantages in your life. And in the next hour, I'm going to give you my system, this same system that I've talked about, that I'm going to show you how to dress in a way that makes it so that you are both authentic, so that you don't feel like that fake and that fraud, but that you also command your respect, that other people know that you are a man who respects yourself and that you expect them to respect you as well. This is the same system that I've used for me and the same one that I have used for hundreds of my clients over the past few years. Now, what makes this training different? The big thing is that there's nothing for sale. I've been on plenty of webinars myself where it's just a pitch fest, where it's just over and over and over again, they hide all the good, useful content behind the paywall and say, well, if you really want to know how to do this, then you have to come and work with me. And yes, I do offer one-on-one coaching, but what I am giving you today is good, helpful, actionable content that will transform your appearance. You will walk away from this today knowing the right steps to start improving your style and to start improving the way that you look. All right, so let me ask you a question. Do you feel like there are times when you look like a strong, respectable, confident man, and then there are times when you look like you're average, unambitious, or just mediocre? Do you know what the difference is between the times when you look great and the times when you don't look great? Are you able to pinpoint and quantify those differences, and are you able to break those down so that you can start to get rid of the things that make it look like you are average or mediocre and double down on the things that make you look respectable and confident? Do you recognize that your life could improve if you dress better, but you just don't know where to start? Maybe you hate trends, or you absolutely loathe the idea of going shopping. The vast majority of men feel that exact way. I know I still don't necessarily get a thrill out of shopping, but I love when I do get to go because it's an effective and efficient process, and I enjoy the challenge of being able to find the right things, and I don't hate it the way that most men do at all. Do you want to dress differently than you currently do, but you hate suits? Or any other item that people tell you that you have to look good? Are you sick of prescriptive formulas that say that the only way to be stylish is to wear X, Y, or Z? Does it make you feel like you're just wearing some other uniform, or that you have to conform in order to be able to dress in a way that actually looks good on you? Or are you sick and tired of wasting your money and your time by buying a bunch of clothes that you never wear once you're outside of the dressing room? I know that I've been there. There have been plenty of times where I've been talked into wearing something or buying something, and then as soon as I get home, it makes it out of the shopping bag, but it hangs up in my closet and it's never worn again. I'm sure you've probably been there too, and we can fix that. We can solve that. But ultimately, do you just feel stuck? Like the inertia of life has caught hold of you and that you're just coasting along instead of chasing your own goals? Because believe it or not, as funny as it may seem, by changing your appearance, you create a chain reaction that allows you to start leaning into and focusing on bigger changes in your life. It can get rid of a lack of clarity. It can help you know what you should be doing with your life, and maybe you just don't have that clarity within your own style. Maybe you just don't know what dressing better or having good style actually means. There's nothing wrong with that. I would say that most men feel that way. We have no idea what it means to have good style. We think of guys like James Bond, but I don't live that kind of life. I don't have to wear a suit every day. And so if you don't know what it means to have good style, then we can definitely dive into that too. Because I have awesome news. If any of those feel like you, none of those things are actually your real problem. The real problem is that you just haven't yet began to understand style from the 6 key steps that I'm going to be teaching you today. Now, these 6 steps are the key to being able to always look and feel awesome, to always look and feel like you are on top of your game. They're the key to saving time and money, avoiding really bad purchases, or even just avoiding mediocre purchases that don't actually get the ball moving forward. They're the key to seeing yourself in a new light, to being able to transform your self-perception. These steps are the key to having others see and treat you with more respect, maximizing your own results while minimizing the effort that goes into your appearance, and never feeling underdressed, overdressed, or outdressed. Because believe it or not, feeling overdressed or outdressed can be just as detrimental to your success in your life as being underdressed is. And you don't want to just default to, I should always wear a suit all the time, or I should always dress more formally all the time. You'll be able to make the perfect impression every single time you want to. You will be self-sufficient and will never need to rely on someone else to help you with your style. And you will be treated better, given the benefit of the doubt more often, and granted more respect by the people in your life who matter the most. So here's what you need to know. These 6 steps, these are universal. They apply to any man, anywhere in the world, at any point in history. These are the 6 steps that led to good style 1,000 years ago, and these same 6 steps are what will lead to good style 1,000 years from now. These are the types of fundamental building block principles that you can apply in your own life, again, so you never have to worry about whether or not what you're wearing is actually good. So before we dive in and I give you what these 6 steps are, I imagine at this point you're probably wondering who I am and why I have any right to talk about this stuff with you. My name's Tanner Guzzi, like I said at the beginning, and I've been in the menswear industry for the last 6 years. I've run a website and a YouTube channel called Masculine Style, where I've helped thousands of men improve their appearance. I've been featured in GQ a few times. In fact, this photo that you're looking at right now is from a couple of years ago when I was at one of the biggest menswear trade shows in Florence, Italy, there with one of the brands that I was working with and representing, and was featured by GQ while I was there. And that brand is actually a custom suit company that I oversaw all the store operations for a few years, and worked hand in hand with not only the designers of the clothing themselves, but also with clients. And so I have done fittings for suits and for other types of clothing with hundreds of men, and I understand the ins and outs of not only this industry, but what goes into making a man a well-dressed and great-looking man. All right. You guys ready for this? Because this is where it starts to get fun. Let's dive into these 6 steps. Now, in order to do that, we first have to set the stage, and you need to understand that in the world today, there is a false binary, and it is this. Most men in the Western world in the 21st century have this simple heuristic in their head. We think that good style is when you're wearing a suit, and bad style means that you're not wearing a suit. Or to put it a little bit differently, we look at it as the more formal your clothing is, then the more stylish it is. And this is absolutely not the case. You do not need to wear a suit in order to be a well-dressed man, especially because it pays off just as much at the gym, or when you're making a run to the grocery store, or when you're going out to a dive bar to dress well and stylishly as it does when you're going for a job interview or you're going out for a first date. You can reap the same benefits, but you're certainly not going to go lift weights or go run a marathon in a suit. And so this false binary of you have to dress more formally in order to be stylish is something that you absolutely need to get out of your head. You do not have to wear a tuxedo or a top hat and a white tie ensemble in order to be the most stylish man in the room. In fact, for a lot of you, maybe owning a suit is the complete opposite of being well-dressed. And maybe owning and wearing multiple suits is detrimental to these big, important goals in your life, as opposed to being something that actually contributes and leads to them. So that false binary, that's the old way of thinking. And what I'm going to introduce you to today is the new way of thinking. Now, these are the 6 different steps, and it's a pyramid because you start off with the basics, and as you start to build up from those, then each one becomes increasingly more fine-tuned, but not necessarily as important as the step that preceded it. But by being able to look at your style from this perspective, by being able to shift your mindset so that you see style in this new way, regardless of who you are, where you are, when you're trying to dress well, you will always have good style. All right, so let's start at the very bottom of the pyramid. Let's talk about step 1, which is your body. Now, if you think about it, it doesn't matter how good something looks on somebody else, whether that's one of the leading actors in Hollywood on the movies, or it's somebody from a history text or anything else, even just the guy who's better dressed than you in the office. It does not matter how good something looks on him. if he has a different body than you do, then it's not going to look as good on you. And so the very, very base thing that you need to understand in order to start to make sure that you are always dressed well is what does and does not work with your body. Now, yes, that includes things like the shape that you are in, and you can change that. You can get in better shape, you can get in worse shape, and your style will need to adjust accordingly. But it's not just that. It's simple things like the relationship between the color of your hair and the color of your skin and how strong that contrast is, or the shape of your face and what collars will look best with that, or what sunglasses or eyeglasses will look best with that, or even little simple things like what colors look better on you. Do you have a warm complexion and you're more flattered in warm colors? Or do you have a cooler complexion and you look better in cooler colors? Now, I know that as you look at all these, you can just start to, whoa, Tanner, this is already way more complicated than anything else that I want to focus on. And I know that it can look like that, but let me walk you through this because, okay, look at this photo right here. Just the idea of knowing the difference between warm and cool colors. Let's say that you walk into the mall and you walk into your favorite store, and in there they have a polo shirt in every single one of these colors. You can immediately eliminate half of them because you know what doesn't work for you. So your decision fatigue of having to try and decide, well, do I like that blue or that white or that green? It's gone because you've already eliminated half of everything that's in there by knowing that. Same thing if we go back. If you know what is best with your body, with your face shape, with your contrast type, then it makes so many of the decisions for you that you can operate on default. You don't have to worry about this pattern or that color or any of these other variables. You can just immediately and automatically write those off because you know they're not what's going to be best for you. It makes buying so much simpler. Now, that said, and that understood, dressing well is not just the science of what works with your body, because clothing is communication and you're communicating something to the rest of the world. And so it's not just a matter of knowing what colors or what collars or anything else works best. So let's move on to step 2. Step 2 is your archetype. Now, there's 3 different masculine style archetypes, and these are based on the way that you interact primarily with the world. Now, if you look at these photos here, it's very apparent that all 3 of these men care about their appearance. Every single one of them has put in some time, put in some energy, and put in some effort into the way that he looks. But all 3 of them interact with the world very differently. All 3 of them dress very differently, and all 3 of them use their clothing to achieve different goals. Now, can you say that any of them is better dressed than any of the others? Well, yeah, if you go back to that old way of thinking of suit equals good and everything else being bad, then the man in the middle is going to be the best dressed. But for our friend over here on the left who is involved in a motorcycle club, wearing a suit is completely counter to all of his goals. Just like Kanye West over here on the right, for him, wearing the cut of a motorcycle club is not going to benefit his record sales or his ability to do what he's doing with his own career. And so all 3 of these men, based on their archetypes, are dressed in very, very different ways, but they are all leveraging their style in order to help them achieve their own individual and unique goals. So let me tell you a little bit about what these archetypes, what they are, and what they represent. The first of the 3 is the rugged archetype, and you fall into this if your primary interaction with the world is physical. If you are more interested in doing things with your hands, if you're kind of that traditional rough and tumble masculine man, you're comfortable in nature, you work in nature, you are more interested in shaping the tangible and tactile world around you, then your primary archetype is rugged. And as a result, you should be dressing in a way that reflects that. Not only that tells that story, but also functions that way, because if you're out on horseback, a suit is not going to be the best option. Just like if you're working on an oil rig or you're teaching wilderness survival, streetwear or a Lacoste polo is not going to be your best bet. You need to be wearing clothing that not only from a functional perspective works, but it also tells the story that you want to tell. The second is the refined archetype. Now, you fall into this one primarily if your main way of interacting with the world is through social, financial, or other methods related to respect and credibility within your own community. Now, the big and easy to recognize examples of this are people like politicians and bankers or other people who are able to influence the world around them through their connections and through their network. But maybe you are just a simple family man, or you run a small business, or you oversee a few different people at your company. you may very well fit within this refined archetype because you're not physically interacting with these people around you. Your influence does not come from the physical dominance that you can exert over them, nor does it come from rebellion, but it comes from the ability to understand the system, work within that system, and climb the ladder to the best of your ability. But maybe you don't fit that. Maybe you like to be the rebel. Maybe the way that you interact with the world is by following the beat of your own drum, is by enjoying and embracing the social risk that comes from being on the outskirts. Maybe you define yourself as an outcast or the rebel or anything else. And so for you, the third archetype, the rake, is going to be where you fit in. And these are the men whose clothing helps them set themselves apart from the rest of the crowd and be able to manipulate and manage their own goals as a result of that societal rebellion. Okay, so once we've got your body, then we move on to your archetype, but archetype is not it, because as you dive in deeper, you can combine archetypes. You can focus on, well, maybe you've got a good balance of refined and rakish, or maybe you are rakish, but you don't necessarily identify with the gutter punk rakishness that you're seeing in this photo. So when we go to step number 3, these are your tribes. Now let's take a look at these 4 men right here. All 4 of these men would very, very easily fall within the rugged archetype. You've got your outdoorsman, you've got your military man, you've got a cowboy, and you've got your survivalist. Now, if you were to come up to all 4 of these men and assume that they know each other, that they like each other, that they interact with each other, that they even are after the same goals, then you're thinking too broadly. Because yes, they do all fall within that rugged archetype, but they fit into very, very different tribes. And tribes today are a little bit different than what they used to be because, yes, historically, tribes were the entirety of your existence. Historically, tribes were everything about you. That was the only society that you interacted with unless you were at war with somebody. And we still see residue of this, for example, in sports. Now, just take a look at the clothing of these 2 men. It's very, very tribal because obviously, depending on what team you're rooting for, you either really like the guy in blue and you really hate the guy in the white and the gold, or vice versa. But that kind of tribalism still exists, and it may not be as structured or as delineated as we see on different teams. It may just be something that exists within your own group of friends, or your family, or the company that you work for, or the music that you listen to, or even the type of exercise you choose to pursue when you're in the gym. And so you need to think about who your different tribes are and the clothing that is acceptable within those tribes, and whether or not conforming or rebelling against those acceptable forms of clothing is going to be in your best interest. Let's say that you're a white-collar worker and the uniform that's expected of you at work is a suit and a tie. Now, if you're trying to keep your head up, you're trying to get in good graces with the rest of the people at the company, you're trying to make your way up the ladder, then it is in your best interest to understand the tribal expectations and to dress accordingly. But maybe you're trying to break the rules. Maybe you're trying to change the culture. Maybe your goals are a little bit different. And so your goal is to rebel against that and to dress a little bit differently. Now, that may be subtle, that may be overt, and that's ultimately up to you as you try to determine what is the best way to accomplish those goals. But the way that your tribe perceives your clothing is hugely important and incredibly critical as you start to develop this permanently effortless, good style that you want to have for the rest of your life. Now, that said, as important as it is, tribe does not override everything. It does not end there, because we've seen tribes. Here's a great example of what happens when everybody wears the uniform too strongly. Now, the irony of a photo like this is I guarantee you that almost every single one of these girls would argue that she's unique, that she's special, that she dresses differently than her friends. Yet when all of them are wearing military jackets, scarves, skinny pants, and tucked in boots, like that's a tribal uniform right there. And you do not want to look like a carbon copy of everybody else around you. And so there's always an element of personal taste. Now, some of these girls would probably argue that that's exactly what they're doing by wearing red pants or a quilted jacket or boots with clasps versus laces or anything else. And so it always is based on a balance of your own personal taste versus the uniform or the expectations of what's within the tribe. How much do you like what everybody around you is wearing? And how much is it in your best interest to dress like them versus being in your interest to stand out and to separate yourself from the crowd? Now, what I want you to realize is that standing out or fitting in, neither one of those is good or bad. Again, going back to this idea of a false binary, we live in a world that teaches us that standing out is good and fitting in is bad, and wearing a suit is good and not wearing a suit is bad. And yes, when it comes to things of morality, absolutely think in terms of good and bad. But when it comes to things like your clothing, get that binary out of your head and just focus on the difference between effective or ineffective. Maybe a higher balance of tribe to taste is more effective, or maybe a higher balance of tribe to taste is ineffective, and you need to know what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish as an individual and within your groups and tribes, and then be able to dress according to those, and again, not worry about good or bad, but just think about effective or ineffective. All right, let's move on to step 5. Now, regardless of whether or not you like a certain thing, you fit in with a certain tribe, what your body is, or anything else, there's still some things to factor in beyond that. Let's say that you travel for work and you travel with the same team. They're your tribe. You guys have certain things that are expected of you based on what you do for a living and how you fall within the hierarchy of that team. And so you all dress according to that. You have your own personal taste and your own personal nuance. But let's say that one week you guys are on a business trip and you're in Miami, Florida. You're probably going to pack clothing that's a little bit different than 2 weeks later if you're in Alaska, right? Your location can and will have a big impact on what you wear and how you wear it. And so this needs to be factored in on top of tribe and taste and your body and your archetype. Now, obviously, this takes less and less precedence as we start to move higher up in the pyramid, but it does still need to be factored in because you cannot have the same clothing and have it be worn all the time in the same place. For example, let's say that within that same trip, you spend some of your time with that same group of people at a board meeting. You're going to be wearing a certain set of clothing that's going to be important, but if the next day you find yourself in the gym with that same group of people, you better be dressed differently. If you're wearing the same clothing to a board meeting as you are to the gym, you're not leveraging your style appropriately. Unless, obviously, that's the expectation of your tribe, or there's some other variable that falls lower on the pyramid to account for that. But for the vast majority of us, location is a factor that needs to be considered and needs to be determined on top of those other things that we've looked at. All right, and now the very final one is your effort. Now, effort is a big beast to tackle because it can involve a lot of different things, but the main thing that you need to focus on is how much of this do you actually want to care about, and how much time or energy do you want to put into it? Do you want a small, minimal capsule wardrobe like this one here, or do you enjoy clothing and you enjoy dressing well and you enjoy having it be different and distinct for all these different environments and you want a big closet? Maybe for you, the ideal amount of effort is to not have to put in any energy whatsoever once you roll out of bed. And maybe for you, the ideal amount of effort is that it's fun to get up every day and to think about the challenge of what it is that you want to wear. So the sixth and final component that you need to focus on is your effort. So there it is. That's your perfect recipe. That right there is something that you will be able to factor in regardless of where you are in the world, at what point in history, doesn't matter the culture, doesn't matter what you're trying to do. You factor in those 6 steps and you are going to be able to perfect your style. So what is the result of that? What does that look like for you as you start to incorporate this recipe or these 6 steps into improving your style? Well, the first thing is that you're going to stop spinning your wheels. You're going to stop feeling like you can't get anywhere. That, yeah, every couple of years or maybe every couple of months you go buy some new clothes, but they don't feel any better or any worse. They don't actually change anything. You're just stuck on this treadmill of I look average, or at least I don't look bad, but I don't necessarily look good. On top of that, it's going to make it so that you don't feel like this fraud. You don't feel like the things that you're wearing are not actually consistent and congruent with who you are and who you want to be. You're not going to feel like a poser or a fake or a phony. You're going to feel like, rather than somebody else determining and telling you what you should be wearing, that your clothing is actually a very, very deadly effective way for you to tell the rest of the world who you are on the inside. In fact, what it does is it helps your clothing stop being a liar. Now, I assume that you define yourself as a pretty good man, and you've got good character traits about yourself. You've got things that you have going for you, and otherwise you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be this far into this presentation if you were not someone who had great things about you and who had things that were worth sharing with the rest of the world. Now, let me ask you, if somebody were to tell you to define yourself and you were to say that I'm ambitious or hardworking or caring or attractive or I get results or whatever else it is that you use to define yourself, would your clothing support that statement, or would your clothing be undermining every positive trait that you're saying and be saying, no, he's none of those. He's average. He's boring. He doesn't care. He doesn't think about things. His biggest concern is comfort. He just wants to fit in. He's boring. If you use this system, your clothing will never undermine the message that you're trying to say. And lastly, what it does is it makes you stop feeling uncomfortable. Not only physical discomfort because your clothes feel wrong, because they don't fit right, because you don't understand how they should be working with your body, but socially and even based on your own self-perception, you stop feeling uncomfortable. You start to feel authentic, and not only authentic, but ambitious. It can start to lead to more and better self-improvement, because one of the coolest things about dressing well, if you're newly on this path of self-improvement, or you just feel like you're kind of going with the flow and you haven't made any drastic changes lately, is by dressing better, by working through these 6 steps and changing your appearance, you start projecting to yourself and to the rest of the world immediately that you've just leveled up. And what that does is it puts you in the position where you either have to step up your game and actually start to level up, or it turns you into a liar and you start projecting a story about who you are and who you aspire to be that you never actually arrive at. And so what it does is it takes that discomfort of ambition and helps you leverage it into the comfort of actually accomplishing something. So let me show you what I mean and somebody who this has worked for really, really well. This is just one of many of the men that I've helped out, but I'm showing you him because you may have seen him before. This is Greg O'Gallagher. He runs a site called Kino Body. You may have seen some of his ads on YouTube or anything else. And Greg and I have known each other for a few years. Now, when I first started helping Greg out, he just dressed in a way that wasn't bad. It was just neutral. And Greg, he's a good-looking dude. He's in great shape. He's got good genetics. And so he already had all of that going for him. But his clothing did not tell any sort of story about who he was or what he wanted to do with his life. He just was there and just kind of average. And so after working with Greg one-on-one for a few weeks, he got to the point where he is telling a wonderful story about who he is. Now, regardless of whether or not you like this picture, whether or not you like his style, whether or not you think that this is good style for you, I want you to factor that out, focus out the personal taste, and just recognize that this is not average, that this is a very intentional look. And what's fun is that I did not pick out a single one of these clothing items for Greg. I'm not a stylist. I didn't pick out any of these and say, you should wear this or you should try that. These are all things that he picked out and bought for himself because he implemented these 6 steps. He understood the principles. And now on every single video that he puts out on his YouTube channel, he gets comments from people asking him, Greg, tell me about your style. Greg, where'd you find those pants? Greg, where'd you pick up that shirt? Because his style is something that has led to more and more success for him within his own business. Essentially, Greg does not need me anymore. He doesn't. And that is one of the best things that I can do. I know that there are other men who are coaches, there are other guys who are stylists, and their whole business is built around the idea of, I'm going to help you pick 30 items, knowing that in 6 months you're going to come back and you're going to have to pay me and you're going to need me to do that again. But my whole goal with this is to render myself obsolete. I want you to not need me anymore because you can do this on your own. Stylists will give you the metaphorical fish. What I've just done is teach you how to fish. So today I promised you that I would teach you how to always dress in a way that's congruent with both who you are and who you aspire to be. And I've done that. I told you that I would show you how to make sure every piece of clothing you wear both serves a purpose, but then also makes you look great and feel awesome. And if you implement these 6 steps, every single piece of clothing you own will do just that. I told you that I would teach you how to be self-sufficient, so you would never have to rely on buying another buying guide or getting advice from your partner or absorbing whatever the magazines are saying is the latest trend this month, that you would be able to be self-sufficient and know how to develop and curate your own sense of style. And I also told you that I was going to give you my exact system that I have used to not only transform my own style, but to help out hundreds of men. So, if this is the one thing that I want you to take away, it's this. This is the crux of it. This is the one thing that you need to take notes on. Draw this. Make sure that you know this, because this pyramid, these 6 steps, this is everything. Start at the baseline with your body. Know what works and know what doesn't. From there, move up into your archetype. Know how you interact with the world, build upon that, and focus on that. From there, know within those archetypes and even across those archetypes who your tribes are, what the expectations are within them, where you fit within them, but then also where you aspire to fit within them, and how your clothing can help you within that. Beyond that, know what your own personal taste is. You should never be wearing something that you don't personally like, because then that congruency, that authenticity goes out the door. Factor in your location, know where you are, what the task is at hand, and whether or not your clothing can contribute to or detract from your ability to do that. And last, know how much effort you want to put into it. Whether that's a lot or a little is totally up to you, and embrace the fact that you can put in as much or as little of it as you want to. So now, you just have a choice to make. You need to decide if this is something that you're going to put into action, or if you're just going to keep going back to the way things were, keep relying on maybe a wife, maybe a friend, maybe somebody else who you think knows better than you do, but who really doesn't, because they don't factor in these 6 steps the way that you can. Now, if you feel like that this is something that you're interested in learning more about, if you feel like, Tanner, this is great content, but I've got some questions on a couple of these things, or I don't know how this applies to my situation, because one of the best things about this whole system, about all 6 of these steps, is that they do apply to every single situation, but they may not necessarily apply in the same way. So if you're feeling like you want some more clarity on that, I've set aside some time in the next week to talk to you personally. Talking to you personally about how you can apply this. And what's the best part about all this is the kind of thing that I could be charging quite a bit of money for my time, but the cost for you, it is 100% free. Free. You just have to schedule a time, and I'll give you a link for that, but schedule a time, we can jump on a call, and I'm going to walk you through, and we can strategize, and we can talk about the ways to implement this in your life and help you get over some of the potential hiccups and some of the potential bumps that you may see along the way. Now, before I give you that link, I just want to tell you who this is for, because in order for us to be able to do this and actually see some progress, you have to be committed to making these changes. I don't want to waste my time, and I certainly don't want to waste your time on the phone going through these principles and talking about this stuff if you're not actually ready to start dressing better. If you're afraid that people are going to look at you differently or treat you differently, if you're worried that it's going to be uncomfortable or unfamiliar, if you're not committed to making these changes, then I'm glad that you've been on this long, and I hope that you can pull something from this, but a call between the two of us just isn't right for you, and that's great. And the other thing is, you have to already be a man of value, because if you're looking for something to give your life meaning, if you're looking for something to give your life value, clothing isn't it. Not at all. You will never, ever derive value from the way that you dress. Contrary to the popular phrase, clothes do not make the man. However, if you are a man who already has value, both to offer yourself and to offer the rest of the world, and you just want to be better at actually presenting that and giving that away, then this is a call for you, and I'm excited to get a chance to talk to you. If it's not, then again, no hard feelings, but we're just not a good fit for each other. So if you decide that you want to do this, here's a basic idea of what it looks like. I'm going to help you see the nuances of your own personal situation and give you that clarity on how to improve your style, but then also how to improve your style fast. This is not something that should take months or years. This is the kind of thing that you should be able to start seeing results quickly and effectively right away. You really should be able to start seeing results fast. And if after we spend some time together, you decide that you want me to help you a little bit more and I believe that you're a good fit, I may invite you to be one of the new clients that I take on. Because what I do with those who want a little bit of extra help, they want a little bit of extra time, is I actually go through a 6-week program with you to be able to implement and dial in every single one of these key steps. So, thank you again for taking the time to jump on here with me. I'm really excited for the changes that this is going to make for you. And if you were interested in joining me on one of those free strategy sessions, again, totally free, no pressure, just to join on and to talk about some of the nuances and give you some clarity, I've got links for you below. Just know that these spaces fill up pretty quickly. And so you want to jump on this as quickly as you can, even if you need to schedule a couple of weeks out, but just so that we can take the time and I can help you get your style dialed in. Let's do that and start improving your life.